This podcast is brought to you by Consolidation Coach, the leading M&A consulting firm in the collision repair industry.
Hey there, it's Jason Stahl with another episode of Consolidation Nation, sponsored by Consolidation Coach. And once again, I have my Consolidation Coach team here on premises at Babcock's World Headquarters to do the podcast. Welcome, guys.
Great to be here, Jason. It's
Thank
awesome.
you so much.
Sure. And so today we're going to talk about the seller's life post-sale. What happens after you sell your body shop? And I think the point is that life doesn't have to end. There's so many things you could do. It's not the end of the road. So we kind of want to talk about that. So I'll just hand it off to you, Laura, and talk to me a little bit about what happens after you sell a body shop, the emotions you're going through, and the options that are available to you.
I think this thinking process starts when you're selling. And I know for me, when I was selling, and I talked about this on the last episode, that I really felt like there weren't a lot of options for me post-sale. Like, I was very suppressed. The insurance companies had me very well beat down into believing that I had no value. And I know a lot of shop owners, have that feeling, some of the time or all the time. And I think once you get out of the storm or out of the hole of being in your shop every day, you realize all the different opportunities that do exist. I mean, you think about a body shop owner. They can do everything. I mean, we wear every single hat. We can go from coming out and dealing with a customer that's upset to test driving a car and determining what is the problem, what's causing the noise. We can go out in the shop and scuff a bumper for paint. We've washed cars when the porter didn't come to work. We read financials.
And plunge the toilet.
And plunge the toilet.
I mean,
yes.
just whatever it takes.
Exactly, whatever it takes. So because of that, we're very dynamic, and we're not afraid to say no to a challenge, I think is a fair statement. So because of that, shop owners are very sought after post-sale for many different jobs and a lot of different opportunities. And I think that's something that shop owners need to think about. Some shop owners, when they're selling, they have no interest in doing anything post-sale. They're just going to retire, or, maybe we met this guy today on our Uber ride here. He was a pro basketball player, and he drives Uber, what do you say, one day a week just for something to do, So, I think there's a gamut of people that are from, wanting to be the Uber guy that drives one day a week to having a full-on business. I know when I sold, I fully intended to take some time off and figure something out in time, but I wanted to be a mom. I never got to be a stay-at-home mom, so it was really awesome. I got to be a stay-at-home mom for a number of years. And so for me, that was awesome. And then I was able to give back by creating, Consolidation Coach, that is a business that helps shop owners through the selling process, so that, they don't get the short end of the stick, and so that they can, realize building generational wealth and, having a life 2.0. But I think there's tons and tons of opportunities out there, which we can certainly, dive into. We've done well over 100 transactions now. And, thinking about our clients and all the cool stories, I think that's one of the coolest things about our jobs now is getting to hear what our sellers are doing post-sale with their life. I kind of call it living vicariously through them, and they send us videos and pictures of cool things they're doing. We've got one client that runs a fishing charter, it's really cool. And we've got another client that's doing business consulting, but not for body shops, just, helping people with their financials and such. We've got another guy that's, doing restoration and painting race cars and, help me, Chad.
It's something that as a seller, you can't wait till the last week to decide or start thinking about. You need to, and we usually do encourage our clients to start thinking through that. Again, like we talked about in prior podcasts, some people are they're ready to retire, go have fun with grandkids and enjoy life, whatever. But then you have those others that are looking for that pivot in their life, or that career 2.0. So we start talking to them about that and start thinking about, like you mentioned earlier, as body shop owners that we, all three of us were, we have a pretty deep gamut of abilities that sometimes, a lot of times we get so stuck in running our businesses whenever you step back, if you're fortunate enough, you can take 7 days off for a vacation. Your mind starts freeing up, and you start thinking a little differently. Well, even post sale after that closing Friday, the first week, you're like, okay, it's Monday morning. I'm not going to the shop. What do I do? And your clarity starts kicking in a little bit. But again, we don't want to wait to that last minute. You need to start thinking about it somewhat earlier. What's that going to look like? And what do you want to achieve post sale? What other, and a lot of times we see, like you mentioned, we've got clients that have went from starting another business. They've waited a year to let that clarity kick in and search for themselves what they want to look for in life post sale. And we've had some that, of course, they were fortunate enough when to sell their business. They just wanted a simple life, but they wanted something to do. I had one client that he's now working for Waste Management, driving a trash truck. And he loves it. I mean, it's just, again, think about it. No phone, no employees. You're in a piece of, some of us guys like running equipment. He's running a piece of equipment. He gets paid for it. There's no limitation, I think. It's just a matter, it's very personal, something you need to start thinking about it sooner than later, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, no, I would say so. And with that, I always like to say, hey, plan to take 3 months. Take 3 months. You deserve this. Most of these people have been in business for 20 years. And, take a little time and figure out if you want to do something else, because that's the great thing about when you sell your shop. You may not really have to do anything, but as body shop owners, most of us were go-getters. We're out there getting after it and built a shop. So somebody that built something and created something is not the same person that sits down and does nothing.
You can't turn it off.
You can't turn it off. So you're going to be doing something, but it'll be something of your choice. When I had my shop, I felt like I had created this little baby monster, and I carried the baby monster with me, and he was on a leash, and he carried him. And the next thing you know, the monster's carrying you around. So being able to let that go, because owning a shop, you can't just decide tomorrow I'm shutting off the lights. So if you can go ahead and release that then, and then move on to something that doesn't take up as much of your time, it's very rewarding.
I would imagine it's really hard for a collision shop owner to put on the brakes of his work life, because the auto body business is a tough business.
Fast paced.
And you're in it for a long time, and you guys are really hard workers. So I would imagine that for the most of them, it would be hard to just stop working, right? So talk to me about one of the options that I've seen, and I don't know how common it is, but I've seen it where a shop is bought by a consolidator and then gets an executive position. I don't want to maybe a cushy position, but just an executive position where they get to stay in the collision business, but they don't have all the responsibilities they used to. Is that common, and is that a viable method, option to go to when you sell your shop?
It happens a lot. Some shop owners, they don't want to be anywhere near the collision space. Some shop owners see it as an amazing opportunity. Sometimes they stay in operations. Sometimes they go to some type of executive, position, like you're saying, where they're not, boots on the ground every day, still in the collision space, still making a difference, but not what I will call it in the grind. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's absolutely an opportunity. And that's another thing, a lot of these consolidators, they want to hire every single owner. They do. If the owner is open to the idea. I think the situation is a lot of times the owner is just fed up and done, and they just want out. They feel like they're in a pressure cooker and they just want out, And sometimes we've had it too where they've gotten out of the pressure cooker for 3 or 4 months, and then they go back and they end up working for the consolidator, in an executive position or some other position. Because what's nice about that is, they come in, for lack of better words, they punch a clock, and then they go home and punch a clock, and then they're not carrying that, as Russell called it, the monster around, And when you have that constantly, you're toting it around. I can tell you as a former shop owner, and I know we've talked about it together separately, it is mentally taxing. You're constantly, you go to sleep thinking about it, you wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it, you wake up in the morning thinking about it, and you never have any mental peace in most cases, unless you're not in the grind every day,
I think a lot of owners are looking for that mental peace, and that's what they like.
Right.
If they're fortunate enough so they can sell to a consolidator or whatever the entity might be, but they still have a passion for the industry. They still love what they do. They just don't like everything that might come with it, or everything that might come with running a business, the HR portion,
Right.
the facility portion, the taxation, or all the financials, just whatever. They'd love to just go into a shop, deal with customers, write estimates, have that interaction and be done with it. Or, even, being a production manager or even a parts guy, just something they can focus on that's still related to the industry and not have to deal with everything else.
Yeah.
And there's opportunity for that post-sale.
Yeah. I
You
can
know.
tell you, I actually miss writing estimates. I don't know if you guys enjoyed writing estimates. I really did like writing estimates. I mean,
Well, there was a
missed it.
challenge to it.
Yeah.
There was a challenge to it.
Yeah. And running production was always fun for me too.
Mm-hmm. The process of seeing the car coming in,
Yeah.
disassembly, blueprint, and then seeing it come to fruition back on the delivery line, fresh, crisp, delivering the customer, make them happy. That you miss that process.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I think we all as owners, we like that. I would say we enjoy that. We just don't enjoy everything else that comes with it that you have to handle to have that be part of that process. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Because if you're running production for a couple of days while somebody's on vacation, you're still carrying the monster around while you're running production, I think that, when you go to work for a consolidator, that buys your business, you don't have that anymore. You just have the one thing that you're responsible for, and that's it. So I think that takes a lot of the edge off of it.
I wonder in those scenarios, I think of that, I'm sure it works out sometimes, maybe sometimes it doesn't, where they get an executive position with a new company. Is it sometimes a token throw in to the to placate the seller, and then it doesn't work out maybe because of that, and also maybe there's not a cultural fit because it's a totally different culture than what they came from? Does that happen sometimes?
I think what happens sometimes is you have to be mentally prepared to go from it being your shop and your way or the highway, and understanding that now, there's a grander vision, and maybe, this is how you did things last week, and maybe that makes great sense, but maybe this new owner has a better, maybe not better, but a different, but just as good method of doing things. And I think that's where the trouble comes in. And I think, us as shop owners, I think we're very prideful and very of what we do.
I think most shop owners have to make sure that they're prepared for that if they want to continue on with that whoever that consolidator or whoever it might be, because again, so many times we as business owners, and this is cross industry, we created this and it's great because it's, I put my heart and soul into it. This is the way I like it. This is the way my processes drive. If you're not open to additional information or open to change from whoever that other person or entity may be, you're going to struggle.
Yeah.
And more times than not, it somewhat could simulate what you do, but it might be a little bit different and better. But again, at the end of the day, you've got to be able to make sure you cut that off and say, well, this is no longer, ABC body shop that I own. Now it's XYZ body shop owned by someone else. And I'm no longer an owner. I'm an employee.
Yeah.
Totally different mindset you have to be ready for. And it has pros, it has cons. Whenever we sell, and that's how I met Laura, is she helped us sell our shops. And through that process, how I got to know what she'd done and, and whatnot. We had that conversation because I knew whenever I was selling, at 48, I said, I've got to find something to do. And just seeing what she'd done, I said, this would be of high interest to me if you would entertain me coming to work with you. And she's like, oh yeah, that'd be great. And I had the opportunity also to go work with a consolidator. It just never came to fruition. I think that's just God's way of working his ways through it. So that allowed me within, I think, 9 weeks, 10 weeks, I called her and said, okay, are we doing this? And she's like, you just sold. I was like, I know, I'm already bored. Let's go. Let's figure this out.
I said, can you start tomorrow?
So I was fortunate enough to do that career 2.0, but I'm still in the collision industry, which I mean, I'm a car guy at heart. I love the collision industry, so I'm able to do that. It's just a blessing, and again, serve others by doing so.
There are a lot more jobs in the collision industry than you think of.
Oh, yeah.
Like what we do. I mean, I still get to deal with body shop owners every day. I still get to, but instead of having this person that's upset that comes in with a car that's broken, and in their mind it'll never be the same again, even though you fix it, the best quality that can be done, in their mind is still damaged. So now we're doing a whole different thing in the collision industry where we're taking somebody and we're helping them retire. So that's exciting. So being able to find a different niche in the industry and still help, along with that is very rewarding, and there's a lot more opportunities out there.
I think about, we have this big, beautiful new industry, and it is a new industry called ADAS calibration, right? It's a component of collision, but it's a whole different beast, very high tech, there's no Bondo dust, welding fumes flying around in those rooms. But you say retain ADAS and mechanical. So my thinking is it would be a wonderful natural transition for a shop owner to sell their body shop and start a calibration center, but you may have an established ADAS calibration operation already. Is that an option where they can sell their body shop but keep that in mechanical and reduce their stress and focus on that and not have to fight insurance companies, right?
It happens a lot. Most consolidators are not interested in acquiring mechanical or ADAS.
Why is that?
They focus on fixing cars. That's their niche. They don't want to do, paint protectant film. They don't want to do mechanical work. They don't want to do detail. A lot of the different things as shop owners that we did for additional revenue. And one of the cool things about Chad's store in Hattiesburg, they had a what I'll call a truck shop that sold big wheels and tires and lift kits and
done a lot of accessories, mechanical service.
Yeah, and he had a big service department, and it was a huge added revenue for him. Well, that's just not something a consolidator wants. That's just not something he desires. So there's a lot of shop owners that will retain their ADAS or their mechanical shops, or maybe their we've actually had quite a few people actually that have had that what I'll call like truck accessories that have retained it. And it's just enough to keep them busy, but not too much to be overwhelming. And like you said, with ADAS, becoming such a front burner thing, and let's keep it real. Cars are getting smarter every single year. They're going to have more and more things that have to be calibrated. I bought a car recently, and I had like the predecessor that was 2 years old, and the car is like not even the same car, So I think that the ADAS thing is going to be monumental moving forward, for sure.
That's just another opportunity. Even if you don't have an ADAS or a calibration center at this point, there might be an opportunity in your market that it makes sense. So that's your pivot.
Yeah.
When you sell to start one.
Yep.
Restoration is another one. So you take the owner that's not something that the MSOs really want to pick up, is any restoration. So that's something that they're willing to carve out, and you keep that and do that if you want, as long as you're not competing. That's with anything in the insurance industry. That's something that you can normally carve out, no problem. So the person that's running a shop that really loved fixing cars all those years can now step back and do something that they enjoy and, still be rewarded with fixing cars again.
Yeah. We had a really cool shop that we helped the seller in the Daytona Beach area, and he had a really cool collision center and a really cool restoration shop. And his restoration shop was more of a hobby thing for him when he had his production collision shop. Well, after he sold the collision shop, his restoration shop, it's unreal. And his social media presence now is unbelievable. It is the coolest thing ever. So if you want to check them out, it's Classy Restoration, CLASSI. But their social media is awesome.
That's great. One of these things you guys have on here warms my heart, because what a great way to stay involved in the industry and give back as a VOTEC instructor and mentor young people. Because, you're so ingrained after a 30-year collision career of focusing on that tech shortage and that talent. And now you get the time to give back and mentor young children and children, I say, probably not children, but as I've gotten older as an editor and we hire young editors, I feel a responsibility to take them under my wing and teach them what I know. And I'm sure it's the same in the collision industry. So this VOTEC instructor thing is another option, huh?
Yeah, it is. Russell has one of his clients that he handles. That's what he did. You want to share that story?
Yeah, absolutely. It had a great shop, and just he was deciding what to do after that. He was approached by the VOTEC center there locally, and I believe he's taking the job, and he's ready to go with it. So he's super excited, and that is a great way, for all the time that hopefully you can, as a shop owner, what the shop owner needs when you've got a new person starting. So you're able to teach that person a lot better than what just somebody that doesn't really, that's never owned a shop, that you can say, okay, hey, let's be on time. Let's learn how to take a bumper off first. You're not spraying a car all over the first day. So just the things that really kids need to know, or like you said, kids, we say kids, but it's young adults need to know. And I think that's a great way to give back, and I'm excited to hear stories about how that works out for him.
Yeah, I think a lot of what drove that position or opportunity for him too was his reputation. I feel like, and I'm going from memory here, but I think he had like 4.9 Google reviews, and I think he had like 60 or 70 reviews. I mean, and he's in a kind of a rural area. I mean, that is unheard of, and I think that's a lot of what drove that opportunity for him. He was very well known in the industry of doing a really high quality of repair, and just a genuinely really nice man.
I think it's beautiful that all you guys are former shop owners, because you've grappled with this issue and overcome it before, and you now have that life experience to pass on to your clients. So that's a wonderful thing. Mailbox money, let's touch on that again, because post-sale life, you could have a steady income stream. How often, it sounds pretty common, that the seller retains the real estate and gets to become the landlord for the new consolidator. That's a common scenario?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we encourage our clients to do that. I mean, it is the best exit for them, whether they want to keep the real estate or maybe they want to, and live on the rental income, or if they want to, keep the real estate, maybe sell it in a year or something or whatever. I mean, at the end of the day, it is the best exit for them because they're going to realize a much higher return. But a lot of times what happens is, in addition to the shop owner retaining, their property and living off the rental income, sometimes they'll get, just say $5 million, and they'll take that $5 million and go buy 3 or 4 other properties and get small notes on them where they, still making some amount of a payment, and then put a little money down on it, and it's still making revenue. So it's building, generational wealth. If you figure those properties will be paid off, and depending on how long the loan is, 10, 15 years, and then they've got another piece of generational wealth, they can pass on, as to their family, their children, and that's huge.
How often do you see a scenario where somebody goes off to the beach and sips a margarita and they're happy with that, and they do that the rest of their life? Or how often do you see somebody who thinks they want to do that and then gets restless in a few months?
I think we've had lots of clients buy houses in Florida, and initially they love them and they're there all the time, and I get restless. I think it's safe to say that pretty much every body shop owner is used to hustling and hustling hard. And yeah, you need a break. You need to stop hustling, for a while. It took me a year before I was ready to even think about it, and really it was a little longer than that. I think it was 2.5 years before I really got back at it, but I started getting a little itch at the 1 year mark. And I think everybody's different, I think it's hard, like Chad said, I think earlier, it's just really hard to turn that switch completely off where you're just sitting around eating bonbons and fishing, or, sitting on the beach, or, laying by the pool. I just don't think that the DNA of a collision shop owner, it might be that for a short term, but I don't think it's long term.
It might be a dumb question, but are your options only as limited as the offer or the money you sold for? In other words, if you sell for $20 million, are your options greater than if you sold for $1 million, or does it not matter at that point? Millions or millions?
Well, I think it does matter,
Yeah.
Well, it definitely matters between $1 million and $10 million.
Yeah. And ultimately where you were financially when you did sell, is your building paid off at that point, or are you still paying mortgage payments? I think it's a big thing. And I think that's one of the things that we try to do as a company when we first meet a client is very thing we do is do evaluation. And it really needs to have a much grander name than that, because it's not evaluation. The whole idea is to allow us to get to know the client, the shop, their financials, understand the deal as a whole, and determine a value of the shop, what it's worth and what we can get in today's market, what the option is with the real estate, what that's going to look like post-sale, and most important, figure out what the taxes are going to be. The taxes on these transactions are done through an allocation process, which is extremely complicated, and timing is key. So we help the clients understand all that, work with their accountant to determine, what the taxes ultimately are going to look like, because, yeah, you get $3 million, but if you owe $1.5 million in tax, and then you only have $1.5 million left to live on, plus your rental income, is that going to be enough? And that's a very absurd example, but again, you have to make sure that you paint a picture of what your life can look like post sale, and make sure that it makes sense before you just go and jump in the pool. You know what I'm saying?
We talked about the different buyers having different personalities, and depending on what you want to do post sale, and these shops are getting multiple offers from multiple buyers, right? So how important is it for the seller to look at the buyer to say, is selling to this buyer going to let me do what I want post sale, or does it not? Is it pretty much standard across the board? It doesn't matter, or does it? Picking a certain buyer who you look at their history, and they've the shops they've sold to. These people have gone on to various different things in their post sale life that they wanted to. Does that matter? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. That's a dumb question.
Well,
Forget it.
I don't think it's necessarily. I think it's different. It's not necessarily how it's going to affect your post life. It depends on what that buyer how's it going to affect the employees of the business and things like that. Are they going to be comfortable selling to this buyer or that buyer because of their culture, because of their history, things like that. But as far as how's it going to affect you post sale, really not. I think the moral of the story is, plan as much as you can earlier in the process than an afterthought, or at the goal line. Okay, we're fixing to sell. This is really going to happen. What am I going to do? Don't wait till you feel good that, okay, we're under contract. I'm 4 weeks from closing and hit you like a brick wall. Now I got to start thinking. Do it early. And the other thing is, there is life after owning a body shop. There is. It can be done. We're examples somewhat, and we have a lot of other clients that can be shining examples of it as well. Because I think, and I've heard it from other people, the body shop industry automotive industry as a whole is, but the body shop industry is unique in that aspect. From running a body shop, you've got a lot of talent that is transferable to other industries.
Yeah.
Or
very much so.
Or whatever the case may be. And it's just, the ability to sell just opens up that, avenue of what post life or post ownership, better stated,
Yeah,
could
you
look
bring up
like.
a good point, Chad. There's the post-sale life of the seller and the post-sale life of the employees they're leaving behind. How much concern should the seller put on themselves versus their employees?
I think most shops, that's something we talk about. And honestly, you correct me if you have a different, we never have to bring it up. The sellers bring it up that's a concern, that they want to make sure it's going to be a good environment for the employees post sale. Because, as body shops, you have facilities, you have equipment, you have all that, but it's all that tangible things. You can buy that. What really matters and what really makes that facility, or what makes that business, is employees, the human capital portion of it. And most consolidators will tell you that's one of the bigger, to label them, assets they really are looking to acquire, is that human capital. So as a seller, you should be concerned, and I think all of our clients are concerned, because that's the typical client that we want to deal with. They want to make sure that it's going to post sale, that their employees are going to be handled in an amicable, good way, and they'll have the same opportunities they have now or better than. And more times than not, they have a lot more opportunity post sale.
And I'll add to that, most of the owners would not have businesses that were able to be sold if they were not great people and were not great to their employees. Mm-hmm. So that's something that they genuinely care. They said, I want to make sure that we're handing these employees off to somewhere maybe they can grow even more. If you're a shop owner, they can only go as high as one step below you. So when you get to the MSOs, you've got opportunities to be, regional managers. You can, there's some that have gone all the way as the president of the company, that have started off and gone a long way. So there's a lot more opportunities, and that is something that most every person that I've dealt with is really concerned with, and we kind of watch that too to make sure that that's something that we can make sure that they're giving to their employees.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I've had a lot of clients even, ask me with other transactions with this buyer, with that buyer, what have you seen play out, you know, and asking our opinion. And truly, I mean, that's what we're coaches. We're here to coach people through the process, hold their hand, help them understand all these different nuances, because the buyers are all different. Like I said, you know, in another episode, you know, think about restaurants. When you go out to, you know, eat, you know, you can go to Olive Garden, you can go to Outback, you know, you can go to McDonald's, you can go to Chick-fil-A. You know, the consolidators in a lot of ways are very much like these chains. They have their own personalities and different things about them regarding employment and benefits and, you know, all sorts of things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the empathy and concern the owners have for the employees. I get some emails sometimes from disgruntled employees who don't feel that way about the owners. But you just said it yourself that this is something that they bring up, and they are actually concerned about their family, which is essentially their.
Every single shop owner. There's not one that doesn't care about their people. Like, I think that's probably maybe one of the it's definitely top 3 things every single shop owner asks us before we really talk about anything.
Sometimes it takes a little time for the employees to kind of realize, because I have one employee that was an estimator at the time, now a regional manager, and so he was very upset about it. Didn't want to, you know, when I first announced it, and he went to his dad that you know, that weekend and said, I'm upset. And his dad said, "Why are you upset?" So because you know, Russell's getting ready to sell the shop. And he said, "Well, what would Russell do if you found a job to make him twice as much money, and you know, but you needed to leave tomorrow?" And he said he stopped and thought, and he said, "Russell would tell me congratulations and would do everything for me." And most of the shop owners that we deal with would do the same. It takes a little time. The employees are scared. It takes a little time for them to realize that, hey, I'm going to be okay. And they're, you know, normally taken care of with better benefits, you know, and more room to grow.
Yeah, and in most cases, obviously we can't say for everybody, but and I'd say 90+% of the deals that we do, the employees have the same or better pay, the same or better benefits. They get grandfathered in, you know, with, you know, if they've been with the company 10 years, well, whoever their buyer is, they've been with them 10 years. The tenure stays the same. A lot of times, you know, if they were there 10 years, they got 2 weeks vacation. Well, now they're getting 4 weeks of vacation, you know. So honestly, you know, as uncomfortable as change is, a lot of times this change is good for the employees because it gives them things and tools and things they never had before. Also, like retirement funds, 401ks, things like that. You know, it's just usually a better scenario for them.
Interesting. You guys mentioned the trash truck driver, the fishing charter. Any other sort of oddball professions or paths that a seller's taken?
I had one client. I don't know if he'd done it. He was alluding to the fact he was going to go into a septic tank business, where he actually done that in his market.
The honey wagon, we call it.
You sure? You know. But most all of them, a lot of our owners, you know, they've already got real estate experience. Sometimes outside of the collision, you know, their own real estate. So sometimes they look at maybe getting more deeper into that, more commercial space or residential, flipping houses or whatever the case may be. I can't think of anything real unique.
I think a lot of them really get focused on their health, you know, because as a shop owner, you don't have time to go to the gym. You don't have time to meal prep, you know, and do all these, you know, things to help with longevity. I think that's a huge thing, don't you?
I agree.
Well, you guys are, I mean, you're all living proof that there's life after sale. And we don't want to encourage any of them to start a body shop consulting business or anything like that. But you guys all have robust, financially rewarding lives post-sale. So appreciate your input on this episode. And it's been awesome. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank you.
Jason.
Thank you.
Yep.